So did everyone have a good rest of their Halloween on Monday? Anyone else eat way too much candy? I don't even want to look at candy again. I ate so much candy. I didn't look at candy yesterday. Every time it came near me, I was like, no, I had PTSD from the candy. I ate too much of it. And I think I'm ready for it now, though I have to admit to you, we decorated for Christmas yesterday. Against my will. I fought it. My family was all they all woke up on Tuesday morning singing jingle bells and Christmas songs. I was like, what's wrong with all of you? It's November 1st. We have to celebrate Thanksgiving. And my children and my partner all outvoted me, and they decorated for Christmas while I was at soccer practice yesterday. I'm like, that's messed up, you guys. I came home and our Halloween stuff is all out in the yard still. The entire inside of our house is Christmas. And, Thanksgiving is coming. So it's what? Halloween miss? I don't know. In our house, it's weird. I don't know what's going on in our house. It's like a mishmash of holiday. But yeah, I hope you had a good Halloween. We're in November now. It's going to go so fast from here. It always feels like it goes really quickly the second we hit November. It just kind of flies. We don't have that much left of the semester, actually. So lots of fun topics, though, still to cover. So that's good. One of my favorite ones we'll get to a little later today. We'll talk about pregnancy and birth after we wrap this up. But last time you all did those presentations, so we talked about all the different methods. I just want to kind of mention a few things at the end of the chapter here, and then we'll move on to the next chapter after that. And next week we have, we'll finish up pregnancy and birth on Monday. And then on Wednesday, our health center is going to come in and talk about STIs, which is always pretty interesting. They have lots of nice graphic images to share with you, so that's always fun. But we'll wrap this up first. So again, last time we went through all the methods, some of these natural methods, and I mentioned these at the end, but a lot of people use natural methods for birth control. We could call them fertility awareness methods. So if you remember, we have women have that cycle that they go through monthly of hormonal changes and menstrual cycle. Right? You can kind of keep track of that, calculating when you're going to ovulate and avoid intercourse during the times where you would be the most likely to get pregnant. Very, very common method that people won't have any kind of intercourse during that fertile window, which we'll talk about one more time later today. You can also monitor the changes in cervical mucus that women have throughout the month. So women can actually practice with this and get really good at detecting when they are most fertile, when they are most likely to be ovulating based on slight changes in cervical mucus that's released throughout the month. And you can do what's called a basal body temperature. You need a very special thermometer for this, a very specialized thermometer, because the changes are so slight. But you can monitor temperature as a way of also monitoring ovulation. So we can use some of these natural methods as a way to prevent pregnancy. They don't obviously do anything for STIs or STDs, but they might be really helpful for family planning or avoiding getting pregnant or trying to get pregnant, depending on what the goal is. There's a couple of less than effective methods, things that don't tend to be very helpful, but sometimes people use them anyway. Coitus interruptus, that's the best name ever, right? Withdrawal before ejaculation, right? So pulling out early, coitus interruptus, right? A term for you to remember forever. It's kind of funny, I don't know why. So technical. But this can be something that obviously is not very effective, right? And I remember asking you this on that little sexual intelligence quiz, and I didn't even need to have you hold up the false. Everyone said it right off the bat. But when you pull out before ejaculating, right, there's still a lot of that fluids that have been released. There can be a lot of sperm and seminal fluid in that pre-ejaculate. So this tends to be something that is not very effective. My brother learned this the hard way. I love to make fun of him for it. But this is something that can obviously lead to pregnancy still. It's not as common, right? You might have a lesser chance, but it's still going to be something that isn't going to be very effective. Douching is another thing that sometimes people will try and do as a way of preventing pregnancy, but it's ineffective. The sperm are out of range, right? By the time you're doing something like douching or cleaning out the vaginal canal, the sperm are likely far up into, into the uterus, into the fallopian tubes. It's not going to reach them, so it's not going to be effective. tends to be something that tends to be very irritating as well for like the vaginal lining and canal, can cause a lot of infections, but sometimes people do this as a method of like cleanliness or even as a method of trying to prevent pregnancy, in which case it's very ineffective. Also, sometimes people think that when they're breastfeeding, they're less likely to get pregnant because of all the hormonal influences. This is something that isn't overly reliable. Sometimes ovulation can be suppressed when women are breastfeeding. They might not get a menstrual cycle for some time. And so they're not releasing an egg, so that would make it less likely for pregnancy to occur, but it's not reliable. Right? So all of these are kind of less than effective methods that people will sometimes try, but they don't tend to be things that work with any kind of reliability. Yeah. It's very difficult to do. Okay, so and we'll talk about this later. Where can my thing go? But remember that the kind of breakdown of the days, right, that people have going on. Let me find my pen. Like I'm not touching the chalk. But there isn't an egg to fertilize at that point is the problem, right? And so if we look at that, and I'll put it up back here, and it's something I would have put up later anyway. So if we have that whole thing from day 1 to day 28, so somebody's typically having their menstrual cycle like right around here, from days 1 to roughly like 5 or 6. And at the point of ovulation, ovulation happens right around day like 14 to 17. Ovulation. So the problem is if you're having intercourse right here, there's no egg to fertilize. I won't say it's impossible, but the odds are very, very, very low. And there's a lot of stigma and like mixed attitudes about the idea of having intercourse during someone's menstrual cycle. There's nothing wrong with it in the slightest, and your chances of getting pregnant are next to 0. All the way from here to here, your chances are very, very minimal. It's right here. This is that fertile window. Anytime after ovulation and immediately after, like the days after, that's when you're most likely to get pregnant. So people use that knowledge, right, to have, intercourse anytime in here, and they're pretty safe, right? Anytime after here, your chances are way, way higher. So very, very minimal chance. There would have to be maybe another egg had been released, so it's not impossible, but it's pretty minimal. Natural birth control. There are some permanent methods that people can explore. These are definitely things that people have done. I have a friend who just had a vasectomy 4 days ago. So this is something that a lot of people will do maybe after they've had children so that they don't have future unwanted children maybe. So for women, you can have what's called a tubal sterilization. So what they do is they either cut, tie off, or cauterize the fallopian tubes. And so what that means is that the sperm can't get up into the fallopian tubes to fertilize an egg. So a woman will still have menstrual cycles, they'll still ovulate, but that egg can't get down to the uterus. So there's no way they can get pregnant anymore. This also might be something that's done if people are having issues in their fallopian tubes preventing pregnancy. But typically when women have this tubal sterilization done, they still have like hormonal processes and ovulation like normal. They just can no longer get pregnant because the egg and sperm can't meet up anymore. Men can have what's called a vasectomy or male sterilization. They cut, tie, and cauterize the vas deferens. The vas deferens are those sperm carrying tubes. And so what happens is that the sperm are no longer able to enter the seminal fluid. So men will still ejaculate. They still have like a fluid that they release, but it has no sperm in it. So kind of a funny phrase that people often use is now they're shooting blanks, right? Because there's no sperm in that seminal fluid. So obviously they can still have, an erection and ejaculation. There's just no sperm in there. So they can no longer make somebody pregnant. Both of these are relatively permanent. Sometimes they can be undone, but it's not a guarantee. So they're typically considered permanent contraceptive methods. And a lot of people will explore them later in life, like I said, after they've had kids, or if they've made the decision that they don't want to have children ever. These are things that could be explored. We talked a little bit about these, so I'm not going to go over this. We talked about Plan B and the copper, like IUD. These are things that force a menstrual cycle. so that somebody wouldn't get pregnant if they had unprotected sex. We talked a little bit about that last time, but I do want to talk a little bit more about abortion and reproductive rights. And this is something that's covered in the chapter, and this has been an absolutely massive topic this year, right? If you've been following the news at all, like especially over the summer and a little bit before, a lot of discussion about abortion and reproductive rights and who should have them and who shouldn't and who's in charge of all of that. So abortion is the induced termination of a pregnancy before fetal viability. So you are purposefully ending a pregnancy before fetal viability. And I have that defined on the next, I thought I put that on there. No, I did, it's right below, just look down. Fetal viability is when a fetus can survive outside of the uterus on their own. Okay, so that's what it means to have a viable fetus. Typically, this is somewhere around like 23 to 24 weeks. Okay, so I think the youngest baby that was ever born and survived was somewhere around like 18 weeks old. A lot of issues, was in the hospital for months and months and months, but somewhere around like, let me see what the average, I wrote it down because I knew I'd forget, 23 to 24, I had it right. So typically around 23 to 24 weeks, a baby would have a chance of surviving outside of the uterus. Now, a full pregnancy goes 37 weeks. This is a very, very premature baby. But the idea is that an abortion is sometime before that baby could come out of the body and in theory survive. So this can be done surgically, where you empty the uterus with a vacuum, right? That's something that would be done by a surgeon. Or it can be done through medication like an abortion pill, which works by blocking progesterone, which would then kind of cause the baby or cause that fetus to be released. Okay, so it can be done in a couple of different ways. And typically what happens is we divide people into like pro-life or pro-choice. Now, it's very rarely that clear. Like some people are all the way on one side or the other, but a lot of people are kind of in the middle. Like maybe it depends, or you have kind of stipulations of where you fall. Pro-life is somebody who believes that abortion should be illegal or strictly regulated by the government, right? So if you're pro-life, you don't believe in abortion, right? If you're all the way over on the pro-life side. Pro-choice is somebody who believes that the abortion decision should be left up to that person, left up to the woman who's carrying the baby, and not regulated by the government. Okay, so obviously you could be all the way on the extremes, or you could kind of go back and forth, or, you know, maybe it depends on how long someone's been pregnant for you. People tend to be kind of all over the place on that. Yeah. Yeah, often it depends on obviously like how long after, but there have definitely been cases where, you know, somebody has died and they're still able to save the baby, or the mom has died during childbirth or close to, and they're still able to deliver and save the baby. So it's a time game. There's not a lot of time to do so, but it often, you know, there have been lots of cases where that has, unfortunately, you know, where the woman hasn't made it and the baby is still able to be born. Typically through like C-section, they would go in and remove the baby. Yeah. Sure. For a baby, you mean, or for the woman? So usually it's as pregnancy gets close to delivery is when that woman is in the most danger. So typically right before somebody goes into labor and at the end of pregnancy, they can get something called eclampsia or preeclampsia, where their blood pressure shoots up through the roof. And so oftentimes it's very dangerous to the baby and the mom. And so what can happen is they might need to go in and remove that baby quickly, or put the mother on some kind of medication to bring that down. So that's one reason. Another one is bleeding during childbirth. And this is way less common. I mean, this is something that is usually controlled, but let's say someone is anemic and they don't stop bleeding very quickly. It might be possible that they bleed out during childbirth, that they have heart complications. It's not very common anymore. Women died in childbirth a lot before we had the medical care that we have now. Now, typically, there's a whole team assigned to the mom and a whole team assigned to the baby. And usually it's not, you know, it's so rare now, but it definitely can happen, unfortunately. Right? Sure. Any other questions or thoughts or anything for now? So this year, there was, as I said, a lot of legislation. So I put this up here and I'll read it to you. In 1973, the United States Supreme Court ruling on Roe versus Wade recognized the right to abortion, citing the US Constitution's guarantee of personal liberty under the 14th Amendment. So in 1973, we recognized through a whole case, which became known as Roe versus Wade, that women should have the right to choose whether or not they want to have an abortion. On June 24th of this year, so 2022, the US Supreme Court ruled 6-3 to uphold a Mississippi abortion ban that was challenged in the case of Dobbs versus Jackson. And the Women's Health Organization overturned the landmark Roe versus Wade ruling on a 5-4 vote, ending nearly 50 years of federally protected abortion rights and greatly diminishing the range of reproductive choices for American women. So this was a quote that was released by the World Health Organization. So if you look at these maps, this is as of October 1st. Okay, so this is something that's constantly changing right now. But you can see the states that are like a dark green is where abortion is still legal. Okay, so a lot of like on our West Coast here, and then a couple of places and a bunch over here. All the ones here that are dark red are banned. You could see some of them allow it up to 6 weeks and others 15, 18, or 20 weeks. Legal but limited means that maybe it depends on the circumstances. So this is something that's very, very complicated depending on where you live. California, the way that it stands right now, and I wrote this down as well. I had to do some research on this because it's constantly changing. In California, you can have an abortion if the fetus is not yet viable or the procedure is necessary to protect the life or health of the mother. Okay, so if there's something that is putting the mother at risk or the fetus is not yet viable, so before like 23, 24 weeks, you can have this done, but it needs to be performed by a doctor. Other states, that's not the case. Abortion is completely illegal, and you might have to go to another state to seek medical care. There are some laws against that as well. So this is something that was legal all the way since 1973. It was a federally protected right, and now it's determined by the state. So depending on what state you live in, your choices are different, right? And they're limited. Maybe it's a certain period of time, or it's completely banned, or it's limited to certain circumstances like rape or the mother being at risk. But it's a very complicated, very involved issue, right? And this is something that took up a lot of media time this year and has been very, very controversial, to say the least. Are there any, oops, go back to that slide here, sorry. Are there any comments or thoughts or questions, anything here? Anything at all? So again, no, this is something that is constantly changing, right? A lot of states right now are in the process of voting and trying to decide on their reproductive rights and their future with that. So these maps are constantly evolving, but that's as of October 1st. Yeah.
The electability of Court of Justices, that we can definitely elect those people. So cool.
For
I'm just in the Supreme Court Justice.
yeah.
Lifelong job. Fundamentally changing the legal system.
Fundamentally, and I think the really hard part too is this opened the door for a lot of other things. And so this is something that Roe versus Wade being overturned led to a lot of discussions about interracial marriage, something that's been legal for over, I mean, just what, 80 years at this point, something that seems crazy to even consider. Gay and lesbian relationships and same-sex marriage is now on the chopping block, right? There are a lot of states that are now trying to fight against same-sex marriage and interracial marriage because this was passed. So this actually almost became like a gateway for other human rights issues. And there's a lot of stuff going on in our country that has been legal or accepted or promoted for 50 plus years that we're now kind of going backward and fighting on. It's really wild and a little bit scary at times to watch. Yeah.
You heard about the affirmative action decision?
Yeah, I mean, so it's something that's it's on there, right? There's so much there. Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to look back at the real ones to see.
Mm-hmm. Right, and so it's led to things about affirmative action, about, as I said, same-sex marriage and interracial marriage and all sorts of like racial injustice stuff that's coming up as well. It's a little wild. My partner and I have 3 kids, and I'm on the birth certificate for all of them, but I'm not like the biological parent of any of them. I don't know if that's 100% true, because 2 of them I think are my eggs, but it's super complicated because I didn't carry any of them. And so we're exploring like, how do we make sure that like I don't lose legal rights to them if that's something that does go through at some point. So this kind of had a very cascading effect. And so something to pay attention to see where it goes from here. But as it stands, the states have the right. In California, our governor has been very adamant that this is something that won't be repealed in our state, but that's not the case everywhere. All right. So with that, we will move on to the next chapter. So we talked a little bit about how to prevent pregnancy and prevent STIs. Now we'll talk about getting pregnant, becoming pregnant, and then looking at some assisted reproductive methods, the experience of pregnancy, childbirth, and so on. Let me make this bigger here. So I put this up here a minute ago, right? And it's perfect for this because it's something just to revisit. That fertile window, like we talked about, is when a woman is most likely to get pregnant. So you can use that to help you get pregnant or avoid getting pregnant. But if sperm is introduced into a woman's body, right, through a variety of methods, it could be through intercourse or through an assisted reproductive method that we'll talk about in a minute. A single sperm cell from a man will penetrate the outer coating of an egg cell from a woman, fusing together to form one new fertilized cell. And this is the moment that we call conception. So of the millions of sperm that tend to enter a woman's body during intercourse, right, 500 to 600 million sperm, about 1,000 of them reach the fallopian tubes, and only 1 gets to fertilize the egg. The odds are definitely not in the sperm's favor, right? That's a lot. Out of 500 to 600 million, 1 is the winner. So if that egg becomes fertilized by a sperm cell, right, then what happens is that egg actually changes in its composition. It almost creates like a protective layering so that no other sperm can get in. And then that is the moment that we call conception, the beginning of a new cell. Now, a woman is not yet pregnant at this point. They still have to have a couple of other things happen, but that new cell, a new cell that's going to divide and form, has been created. So from fertilization and conception, which happens in the fallopian tubes, then this egg has to travel all the way down the fallopian tube and implant into the uterine wall. When it implants into the wall of the uterus, at that point, a woman is pregnant, right? So this can take a little bit of time to happen, right? So this can take like 10 to 14 days on average after intercourse has happened or after the introduction of sperm in some way has happened. And so oftentimes this is like something that's right away, right? So someone has sex or they have sperm introduced, fertilization and conception take place, the egg makes the long journey, implants into the wall of the uterus, sending signals to that woman's body that they're pregnant. And at that point, we can say that they are pregnant. But that takes a couple of weeks to occur. Now, typically, this would happen through intercourse, right, between a man and a woman. But there are a lot of people who struggle with infertility and might have to explore other methods in order to try and get pregnant. So we'll talk about that for a few minutes before we talk about the course of pregnancy. Infertility is something that's on the rise. There's a lot of cases of infertility between heterosexual couples, and obviously this would also apply to gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender couples that might want to achieve pregnancy. So infertility is the inability to conceive or impregnate after 1 year of regular intercourse without the use of any form of birth control. So this is after a couple has been actively trying to get pregnant for the course of at least a year, right, without any kind of birth control. If they're not able to do so, then we would say that they qualify for help with infertility. Now, there are a lot of reasons that people might have struggles getting pregnant. Can anyone think of a reason why somebody might have a hard time getting pregnant? What's something that might get in the way of getting pregnant? Yeah.
I have chronic pot smoking, lower their sperm count.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lower sperm count or lower sperm viability, which can be caused by lots of substances, drugs, or even just naturally occurring for some men as well. Yeah. What was that? Endometriosis, so problems with the lining of the uterus, right? That's great. That's another reason that people might struggle. Irregular menstrual cycles, right? If somebody doesn't have a regular cycle and you can't time this window very easily, that can make it difficult, which is why sometimes people will take birth control pills to get their cycles regular, and then they can monitor it. They know when that cycle is coming, when they're going to ovulate, and then they can use that to help them. Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, hormones and environmental factors and things, a lot of substances affecting hormones for people. There's a lot of reasons that people are struggling with infertility. Yeah. Yeah, diet can play a little bit of a role as well. Oftentimes this is stuff like, again, like men might have a low sperm count or poor sperm viability, which means that the sperm, it's almost like they don't have the energy to make the trek, right? They're not getting the energy and nutrients that they need out of the seminal fluid. Women might have poor egg counts, right? They might not have enough eggs or their egg quality might be low. The fallopian tubes can be blocked. If the fallopian tubes are blocked, whether it's due to like scars or masses or little like cysts or scar tissue, then the egg and the sperm can't meet there, right? There's a lot of reasons that can happen with this. And so that leads to a lot of different options that women can explore. And so typically, whether it's irregular cycles or eggs or hormones or whatever, a couple that is trying to get pregnant and struggling or doesn't have everything that they need to get pregnant, so maybe again, like a gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender couple, would go to see an infertility doctor. We have one of the top 10 in the world here in Thousand Oaks, which is kind of cool. They're like ranked number 7 in the world for infertility, right near the mall over in Thousand Oaks. But right near the cookies, I know where the cookies are at the mall. Every time we would go, because I'll tell you a little bit about our journey with this. Every time we would go to do this, was right next to a cupcake place. And I was like, oh, we have to go to the infertility doctor today. What a shame. Cupcakes, right? I ate my way through pregnancy. Cupcakes. I was being a supportive eater. I mean, my partner was gaining weight. I didn't want to be all thin, right? So cupcakes. I'm a kind partner like that, right? And a kind parent. Halloween, I ate all my kids' candy. I'm a good parent. Not all of it. I'm not mean. A lot of it. So a lot of these different methods. A lot of people will start with medications, right? So maybe it's birth control, right? In order to get them on a cycle that is regular. If a woman is having a hard time ovulating, they might give them what's called a fertility drug, right? So what can happen is you can give women medications. There's one called Clomid, for example, that cause them to produce more than one egg. So if a woman isn't ovulating regularly, you can give her a drug that will cause her to release multiple eggs. Now, this is where you end up getting multiple children at times, right? Because you have multiple eggs to impregnate. But that can be really helpful. Surgery is sometimes an option, right? Sometimes people need to have surgical procedures to help out a little bit. And then there's a whole bunch of different procedures that we can do, like artificial insemination and IVF and things that we'll talk about more in a minute as well. And if you don't mind, like, I'll share with you a little bit about like what we did. I think it's interesting, and if it's boring, you can ignore me for a minute. But my partner and I, so 12 years ago, we wanted to have kids, right? My partner wanted to have kids really, really badly. And we're obviously missing an ingredient, right? Between two women, we don't have the sperm. We have no sperm between us, right? And so we started talking about this, and I have a biological brother who's like 3 years younger than me, and we're very similar. But I did not want our children to be like my uncle's actually my dad, or like any of that weirdness. So we didn't go with my brother. We decided to go with just a random sperm donor from a cryobank, which was kind of interesting. So we decided that we were going to have kids. We were going to go through this whole process, and we went to a doctor down in Manhattan Beach, right next to the Susie Cakes cupcake place, like I said. And we went in there and we tried what's called IUI, or artificial insemination. Artificial insemination, or intrauterine insemination as it's usually called now, is when they introduce sperm into the reproductive tract, right? So they monitor a woman's like menstrual cycle. And when you're right here in the fertile window, they basically take a little catheter and they insert sperm up into the reproductive tract. And you're cutting out a couple of steps and monitoring or whatever. Now, we did this 3 times and had no success. IUI, or intrauterine insemination, artificial insemination, IUI, on average, just to share with you as a random piece of information, costs about $3,000 per tract. Per tract, okay? $3,000. So what that includes is all of the monitoring. Oftentimes they give you a medication, and then the procedure itself and the doctor's visits and all of that kind of stuff. So intrauterine insemination or artificial insemination of $3,000 per tract. So as the 2 of us, we did this 3 times. You're doing your math, right? 9,000. So we did this 3 times with no success. And so the doctor said, okay, we need to do a procedure to see what's going on. So we did a test on my partner, and it turned out both of her fallopian tubes were completely blocked. No matter how many times we did this, she was never going to get pregnant because the egg and the sperm couldn't meet. So she had to have surgery to have her fallopian tubes removed because they can leak and cause problems that interfere with getting pregnant. So she had surgery to have them removed. And now IUI or artificial insemination was no longer an option. This only works because then that sperm can swim up through the fallopian tubes and find an egg. If there are no fallopian tubes, this isn't going to work anymore. So you have to move on to the next option. No, definitely not. Right. That would have been nice. Right. Refund, please. Right now. Sadly, we should have done those tests in the beginning, but they didn't even suggest it. We figured everything was fine. We were just missing, sperm, and then we'd be good. Turned out to not be the case. Yeah. Really interesting. And that's one of the assignment options, actually, if you wanted to do that for the second one. So we have a place in California called the California Cryobank, and it has thousands and thousands of people who have donated sperm. Now, most of them are completely anonymous, so you'll never know their name. You don't know what they actually look like. Give you celebrity lookalikes, which is kind of fun. So there was one that was like a Tom Brady lookalike. I was like, I want that one. My partner's like, it's not Tom Brady's sperm. Like, you don't want that one, right? It's, but they give you celebrity lookalikes. You can purchase their baby photos. So you can purchase up to 3 baby photos of what that person actually looked like as a young child. And then they give you like their height, their weight, their medical history, their family's history, a ton of information. The 2 of us are teachers, so we made PowerPoints for all the different sperm donors that we were interested in, and then we presented them to family and friends and had them vote. It was kind of funny, and then we went with what we wanted, obviously, in the end, but we took everybody's input, and it took a long time to figure that out. So we were trying to find a donor that was as close to me as possible, right? Height, eye color, hair color, weight, ideally like interests and profession, but like as much genetic similarity and ethnic similarity as possible. My partner wanted to carry. I've never wanted to be pregnant. That's just not my gender identity. And so my partner wanted to carry, so we found a donor to represent me. We went through this whole process, and again, no luck. And as a side note, stereotype. This is the stereotype, right? My partner was like, you better bring this back if you want Thanksgiving dinner, right? Turkey baster, right? So turkey baster is the stereotype for this, for artificial insemination. Now, look how massive this thing is. Does anyone remember the size of a typical male ejaculate? A teaspoon, right? That would be like this right here at the end, just the little bit at the end, right? You wouldn't use a turkey baster. This would be completely ineffective. It would just fall out. They use a catheter, like a very thin, small catheter. But the stereotype of this is 2 lesbians at home with a turkey baster, right? With like some sperm sample. There was a movie, if you've seen the movie The Switch, there's like a little part in there about this. So I'll play that for you really quickly and then we'll come back. Right. It is a small little catheter. It'd be done by a doctor in an office. But that is the common stereotype anyway. So, and again, I will remember to bring this home so I can get Thanksgiving dinner. That's the next thing to look forward to in life. Make sure that's going. So with IUI or artificial insemination, you take that sperm, whether that's from a male partner or a donor, right? Either way, and you introduce it up into the reproductive tract. Sperm and egg would meet like normal, and then hopefully pregnancy would occur. Now, if that doesn't work, there are other options that are much more invasive, much more involved. and they take more time and they're more expensive. So if IUI doesn't work, the next option is something called IVF. All right, IVF, in vitro fertilization, is a procedure in which women are growing eggs over the course of roughly a month. Those eggs are then surgically removed from their body. They're fertilized with sperm from either a donor or a male partner in a lab. And then after 5 days or so, once they have met with each other and they're starting to divide and it's a blastocyst, you put that back into the uterus. So you've taken out a ton of steps here. Basically, right, a woman is injecting herself with hormones all month long to cause themselves to grow as many eggs as they can. And then they take a needle and surgically remove each one of those eggs that woman has developed. So pulling them out of the ovaries and then putting them in a little dish. They introduce the sperm and then they let to see what happens in the little dish. And anyone that has fertilized and is progressing, that's a viable embryo that could then be put into that woman through a procedure, and it's put all the way up into the uterus. So now all it has to do is implant into the uterine wall, and that woman will become pregnant. Now, you would think the odds of this are through the roof, right? We've done everything for you, but it's only about 40% successful, because typically people who have this procedure have a lot of fertility related issues, which can make it less successful. Yeah. I don't know. I believe you have to be 18. Like, I believe it's either 18 or 21. I want to say it's 18. You can look it up really quick if you're out of curiosity. Yeah.
You would donate like every day.
Yeah.
And if what you donated was used every time you donated,
Okay.
you just have like little kids,
You could.
so that like you have like an army of like
Little Francis kids out there in the world, right? I mean, and most of the places when you donate, it's anonymous. So there's no way that all of those little kids that you maybe had a hand in creating, literally or figuratively, it might have been a really good pun or a really bad one. I don't know. If you had a part in that in some way, it's not like they could all come to your door one day and find you. Typically, you sign something and your identity is protected. Unless you wanted to know, there are some options where the donor can make it where they leave it open to those children to come find them one day. But yeah, in theory, you could have a part in a lot of children being created. Yes, they do pay you for it. They pay you, it depends on the place. Like, it's often like $100 to $200 per donation, right? And so a lot of men will donate quite heavily, right? Men produce a lot of sperm, right? And so it's not, it's not uncommon for people to do that. There's a lot of checks that they have you go through, but yeah, you could definitely consider it. It is a lot of paperwork. You have to give all your medical family history. They do biological tests on you. They test you for STIs and things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's something you can make money doing and do with some degree of regularity, right? Something to look into, right? Yeah. Yeah. So adoption is a little bit different, right? So if you are adopted, so that would typically be, a baby is born and then adopted at that after birth. So at that point, you usually are able to find out. You can usually do some research depending on. Oh, if you're adopted, you can donate. Yeah, you just give as much medical history as you have, right? Sorry, I thought you meant, I understand what you're saying now. Yes, you could still do that. You just would give the medical history that you know. Yeah.
So there is confidentiality if you donate sperm, and if the child grows up and wants to research their heritage, are they allowed to do that legally?
It depends on the agency. So like we went through the place that we went through, we chose a place that was purposefully closed. So our children, if they ever want to know who their biological father was in some way, they would never be able to find that out. Which I'm fine with at that point, but they would never be able to go find that out. But there are places where it's open, and so they don't hide that information, in which case a child could years later go find out who that person was. But you would decide that as the donor, do I want someone to be able to find me later or not? Or am I just donating sperm because I want to help or I want to make some money? And I don't want anyone ever coming to find me later. You typically get to make that decision. Yeah. So with IVF, we went to do this, right? So my partner and I did IVF. IVF on average is about $12,000 per trip. So with IVF, you go in to the doctor, they do an ultrasound, they monitor your menstrual cycle, and then you start with hormones. The hormones are typically $3,000 to $4,000. It's a huge amount of hormones that they give you. And then you do injections in your stomach every single day for the course of a month, growing eggs. So you're giving someone hormones to cause them to grow more eggs than they would naturally. On average, someone who's struggling with fertility, rather than growing one egg, might grow like 5 to 7 eggs. And then you go in and they put you under, and with a very long needle, right, a very thin, long needle, they go through the stomach, right, and remove each one of those eggs individually from the ovary, either through the stomach or up through the vaginal canal, depending on the doctor and the procedure. So we did this twice. If you're doing your math at this point, my children were expensive, right? 3 times here, that's 9,000 plus 24,000, right? We're getting up there. We did this 2 times with my partner. Her eggs, sperm donor to represent me, right? Nothing, right? And we had the most amazing doctor, and he was like, give me one more try. And we were at the point of like, maybe we'll just adopt. It had been like a year and a half, a lot of like tears, a lot of like effort. He's like, give me one more try and be open-minded. I was like, what does that mean? Like, I'm gonna need more information, right? He's like, you guys have a very unique situation in that you're both women. And he's like, and he looked at me and he's like, have you ever been open to like being part of this? And I was like, I don't want to carry children. No, I never have. And he's like, no, not pregnancy, but we have you grow eggs and remove them from you. And I'm like, wait a minute, I was exempt this whole time, right? And so we did 2 rounds of IVF on my partner, and then I did a round of IVF. And that was intense, right? My partner's a trooper, right? I was like, it's not that bad. It was really bad. But so I grew eggs for a month. My partner, every time we pulled eggs out of her, it was like 5 to 7 eggs. I grew 48 eggs. I'm an egg grower, apparently. Who knew? Hidden talent, right? I grew a massive amount of eggs, surgically removed them all for me. And then we took my eggs and we found a sperm donor to represent my partner in every possible way. And then we took her eggs with the sperm donor to represent me, and we put one of each in, and we ended up with our daughter, Kaya, right? So technically, Kaya could be my partner's or be mine. She's so a spitting image of me. She looks just like me when I was a little kid. But it was fascinating because it took my eggs and me doing IVF and a combination of both of our eggs and all these different sperm donors for us to eventually get pregnant. Kaya cost $48,000. Sometimes I remind her of that. Like, you were expensive, kid. But I mean, we couldn't have wanted her more. And once my partner got pregnant, like everything went fine from there, and we were lucky enough and she was born. But 2 eggs put in, and we ended up with her. And her sisters were much, much easier. Did you have a question before?
Oh, I was just wondering, like, how long?
Yeah, so I grew 48 and 15 of them were grade A. They grade them like A to whatever. Yeah, and so then we had an interesting situation when we were done. You were talking about like people could come find you. You could have all these kids potentially somewhere. So you can donate eggs as well. We had in the end, we had 12 fertilized, ready to go eggs that we could have donated. But then we had that same thought, right? Like, one day I could have 12 children come find me, right? That could be mine. What are the ramifications for our kids? These would then be their siblings biologically. And so we ended up donating them to science instead of donating them to other couples, because it was an intimidating thought. So those are things you have to kind of make your mind up on, because we could have donated those eggs as well. Yeah. What was that? It's quite a bit, actually. Some places will only allow you to donate them, and others, you can grow eggs and go through this procedure. Like, so you could go and grow eggs and like be part of this, and you get paid sometimes like $5,000 to $10,000 per cycle, right? you're like, I'm out, right? I know what I want to do. The downside is it does have a lot of medical complications and it increases your risk of a lot of like reproductive issues. So it's not the safest thing to do. But it is something that people do to help out and sometimes to make money as well. Yeah.
So like if you donate like egg or sperm and you sign the paperwork saying that, you know, the person could come back to find you someday if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Be like, would be obligated to like, I don't know, like be in contact with them if you don't want to, or I don't know.
You aren't obligated in
Kind of
any.
like,
Yeah, and so a lot of people at some point will want to find out, right? Like people who are adopted or people who have some like background with this might want to at some point find out who their biological contributor is, right? And so you usually agree to certain levels. You could say, I'm willing to be contacted, but I want no part. You know, and so it depends on the agency. You can usually choose what level of involvement. And you can always opt for more later, but it's hard to rein it back in later because they can look you up and then they have your information. So we did IVF, like I said, in total 48,000. And then when we went to have our twins, we're like, okay, this took us 2 years to do. We better start now. And so we started when our daughter was like a year old, like 9 months old. We started when Kaya was 9 months old. And we got pregnant the first time. And so our kids are very, very close together. My twins were a bargain basement deal. They were like $4,000 for the two of them, right? Super cheap, right? So in total, what, like $52,000 for my 3 children? We had to really, really fight to have them. So I'm very grateful for them, most of them, right? Unless they're being really bad, right? I'm really grateful for them. But it took a lot for us to go through this whole process. And again, it's really, really interesting looking at our family. We'll never test whose is whose. Like we will never go find out who is biologically connected, but I have like a foolproof way of knowing. I mean, Kaya and Paisley love cake and Emma does not like cake. Emma is not my biological child, right? That is my conclusion for sure. Very imperfect, but it's pretty obvious too when you look at pictures. Yeah.
Insurance doesn't cover any of it.
None of it. Not a damn thing of it, right? I could say that, right? So depending on your insurance, sometimes insurance will cover IVF. Ours did not. So none of it was covered, which was great fun, right? Lots of credit cards. Yeah.
What is that?
I'm not sure. It's pretty expensive either way, right? So I mean, our birth itself, like the hospital and birth was $50. Like our insurance covered everything but a $50 copay. It cost nothing, right? But then, you know, we definitely offset that here. So, and IVF was wild. It changed me forever. Like I didn't like salads before IVF. That's my big one, right? We went out to eat and I ordered a salad. My partner was like, you're not the same person anymore. Like it led to a lot of like emotionality for me. It was really bizarre. All those hormones, and I couldn't eat candy. I did it through October and weren't allowed to eat any chocolate. I was like, the sacrifices I make for these children. I didn't even care about the money. I was more mad about the candy. But I mean, just while there's so many different procedures that people can do, there's some variations on IVF as well that are becoming more popular. GIFT and ZIFT are like versions of IVF where you do just like a different level of screening. Now you can actually screen very easily whether you want to put in a male or female egg. They often do that testing before you put that egg back in. That wasn't an option when we did it, but it is an option now. There's also things that you can do where you mechanically inject the sperm into an egg. If the sperm aren't fertilizing the egg naturally, you can actually insert the sperm into the egg and make that happen. So there's a lot of different options, but these things are not cheap. They're very, very expensive, involved procedures. And their rate of success is actually quite low, just because people typically have a lot of issues. One other thing that you can consider is surrogacy. Right, so surrogate parenting is another thing that people will consider. And this is having somebody who carries a baby for someone else, right? So this could be a woman who's carrying a baby for a random person that they don't know. They were hired to do this. It could be a sibling carrying it for like their male, like male sibling, right? It could be anyone. There are places where you can hire somebody to do this. It could be your child, right? So what happens is they would take an egg and a sperm from you and your partner, let that fertilization occur, and then they put it into this other person. So they're carrying your biological child most of the time. But this is obviously a very involved thing as well. This is exceedingly expensive, on average, like $50,000+ to do, because you have to pay somebody for 9 months of carrying a baby, plus all the procedures and hormones and so on. So this is a very involved option. And then obviously adoption would be another option as well. Lots of movies featuring this. I have a clip from Baby Mama about surrogacy. Great movie for this topic that we're covering. So let me play that for you.